listening to Your Secret is Safe with Me, non-judgmental talk about infidelity with Dr. Marie Murphy. If you're looking for new perspectives on complicated relationship issues, you've come to the right place.
Days go by, they're crawling by.
Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Marie Murphy and I'm a non-judgmental infidelity coach. If you are engaging in anything you think counts as infidelity, I can help you deal with your feelings, clarify what you want, and make decisions about what you're going to do. No shame, no blame, no judgments. If I'm thinking about things correctly, and I'm pretty sure I am, this episode is going to come out the week before Thanksgiving happens in the United States. So depending on where you are in the world and what holidays you celebrate, we are right on the brink of what some of us tend to think of as the holidays, right? And although navigating your infidelity situation can be difficult at any time of year, this may be a particularly challenging time of year to deal with all of the ins and outs of whatever you're doing that counts as infidelity. And my suggestion is that you deal with holiday-related challenges or potential challenges as proactively as you can. With a bit of planning and with the right tools at your disposal, dealing with infidelity during the holidays can be a lot easier. And if you need help making a plan, and if you are in need of tools to help you get through the holidays, let's work together. There are two ways that you can have me as your coach. We can either work together one-on-one via Zoom, or you can enroll in my online course. You're not the only one. Either way, I'm going to teach you how to approach your infidelity situation differently so that you can start to feel relief and a little more ease. And when you're feeling a little more ease, you can start to make different decisions about how you handle whatever you have in front of you. And you can start to feel great about how you're handling whatever you have in front of you. And then bit by bit, you can resolve your whole infidelity situation in a way that's truly right for you. But first, let's just get you through the holidays. So to get started working with me, go to my website, mariemurphyphd.com. I can't wait to meet you. Okay, today we are going to talk about one of the ways money considerations can play a role in infidelity situations. And then later, I'm also going to answer a question from a listener about age and how age matters in infidelity situations. There are lots of money considerations that can come up related to infidelity, but what I'm going to focus on today is the reluctance that some people feel to leave their marriage, or the reluctance that people feel about leaving their marriage because they don't want to give up half of their wealth, even though they really want to live a life outside of their marriage. Maybe that's because they want to pursue a non-affair relationship with their affair partner. Maybe they've been cheating on their spouse with various different people, and the point isn't that they want to leave their spouse so they can pursue a relationship with any specific person. They just know that they want the option to pursue new relationships with anyone they want to. And when people come to me and tell me this, they're usually really clear that this is what they want. But for a lot of folks, having an above-board relationship with their affair partner or being able to see whoever they want means getting divorced if they're married, or at least separated. And for some people, getting divorced comes with financial changes that seem significant and undesirable. When clients in this position first start talking to me, they sometimes say things like, I don't want to lose half of my wealth, or I don't want to have to give up half of my money. Sometimes people are even a little more dramatic and they say, well, I don't want to give up everything, right? Now, before I go much further, I want to mention that some of my clients are considering divorce and are totally unfazed about the financial implications of divorce. And I say this because if you are concerned about the financial implications of divorce, I think it's helpful to consider that some of your fellow humans do not consider the financial implications of divorce to be a problem at all. That's not to scold you for thinking whatever you're currently thinking about money if you are super freaked out about the likely financial implications of a divorce for you. It's just to say that it really is possible for you to look at your finances in a different way, and you might gain a lot from doing so. The other important and interesting thing I want to mention right out of the gate is that I do not see a correlation between the amount of money people have and their concern or lack of concern about the financial implications of divorce. Some folks I work with don't have a ton of resources, and some of them are concerned about the financial implications of divorce, and some of them really aren't, even though the financial implications of divorce could mean significant changes in their day-to-day lives, right? When it really comes down to essential basic needs, right? I also work with folks who are in the top 10, 5, even 1% when it comes to financial resources. And what I see is that some of the people who have multiple millions of dollars to their name are no less concerned about the financial implications of divorce than people who have far less money. And sometimes the folks whose assets are in the millions of dollars are not only concerned about money, but extremely concerned about the idea of losing half of whatever they have. Some people who have this kind of money are like, whatever, I have so much. Ending up with half of what I have is totally fine with me. But some people are really, really, really concerned about having less than what they currently have, even if what they currently have is in the multiple tens of millions, right? So if you're in that boat, I'm talking to you very specifically today. If you are in a high net worth family, I'm talking to you. But even if you aren't in the situation of having multiple millions of dollars in assets and you're worried about losing half of them, today's episode will still probably speak to you in some interesting ways. Because what I'm talking about today isn't just about having a certain amount of money or not having a certain amount of money. It's also about getting clear on what's important to us and why, and deciding what we want to do in the service of what's important to us when our desires are somewhat in competition or in conflict with each other. So getting back to the specific example here, pretty regularly a client will come to me and say something like, I really want out of my marriage. I know I want to live a different life. I love my spouse. I care about my spouse. I want the best for my spouse, but I do not want to be married to them anymore. I really want to experience a different way of living. And again, sometimes the person yearns to have a life with a specific someone they've met. And sometimes the person doesn't have a particular person that they want to share their life with, but they've been seeing other people without their spouse's knowledge, and they know there's a big world out there and lots of interesting people in it. And they want to get out of their marriage and live differently and love differently and fuck differently and do all the things differently. Like celebrate the holidays differently, perhaps. And when I say people want to do these things, I mean they know they want to do these things. They are as sure as they can be that they really want to experience life beyond their marriage. But they also don't want to have less money. They really, 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 really don't want to have less money. Sometimes people tell me that having a certain amount of money or a certain amount of wealth is the most important thing to them. And if that were 100% true, that wouldn't be a problem. The problem is that if they're talking to me, that's usually a pretty good indication that they've started to get the sense that something else might be as important, if not more important to them than keeping all of their wealth. When I talk to people who are really concerned about having less money, one of two things often happens pretty quickly. Some people will say, well, I know it's really shallow for me to care about money so much. Or, I know I shouldn't care about money as much as I do. Or people tell me all of the reasons why they care about money as much as they do. For instance, some people grew up punishingly poor and then created a tremendous amount of wealth for themselves. And they tell me they are terrified of seeing any decrease in their net worth because they are so afraid of finding themselves in poverty again, right? And in some people's thinking, any decrease in what they have signals a slide back into abject poverty. Here's the deal. Telling yourself that it's shallow to care about money as much as you do probably isn't helping you very much. It's not going to help you make decisions. And similarly, telling yourself that it's totally reasonable and right for you to care about money as much as you do may not be helping you all that much either. We want to recognize your current perspectives without judgment, but then we want to start to explore and maybe even challenge your current thinking about money. We don't want to keep on scolding ourselves for thinking whatever we currently think, but neither do we want to justify continuing to think what we currently think. And then we want to get clear on what you get out of having however much money you have. If you have this conflict between wanting to keep all of your money versus wanting to leave your marriage, we've got to figure out what the value of your wealth is. Now, sometimes people try to tell me that the value of having a certain amount of money is obvious or self-evident, but that's not exactly how it works. Having a certain amount of money or a certain net worth or a certain whatever, right, is a neutral circumstance. Let's say your net worth is $30 million. If that's a verifiable fact, then that's a verifiable fact. But what that $30 million means is based upon our subjective thinking. Some people think, wow, like $30 million is a lot of money. Some people don't think $30 million is a lot of money. Some people think they could live out all of their wildest dreams for the rest of their life and their next 18 lifetimes if they had $30 million to their name. Other people don't think it's enough for them to live the way they want to. And what you think about the amount of money you have is up to you, and what you think about money matters a lot. So let's say you've got $30 million to your name and you really want to get divorced, but you don't want to go down to $15 million. It's important to figure out why you don't want to go down to $15 million. Now, when I ask people this question, they often say, well, because I'll have less money. And to that, I always say, yes, that is true. And it's so important to recognize that in our advanced capitalist society, the idea that it is fundamentally better to have more money than to have less money is often accepted as an absolute non-negotiable truth. A lot of us have absorbed this way of thinking, and a lot of us have never really questioned this way of thinking. Now, if you've been listening to my podcast for a while, you may have heard me talk about how important it is to respect your own preferences. It's okay to like what you like. If you simply like the idea of having more money than less money, that isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's not a problem if it's not a problem. But when we find ourselves having to choose between keeping a certain amount of money and something else that we consider really important, we probably need to interrogate our thinking about the value of money. So, one of the questions I ask my clients to help them better understand their thinking about what the value of money is this. If you went from having $30 million to having $15 million, what specifically in your life would change? Sometimes people respond by saying something like, well, I won't have any money, right? And although I understand the fear that drives that kind of thinking, what I say to that is, well, that's probably not quite true, right? And we work on getting their mind to see that in all likelihood, they still will have money. We shift from the really extreme thinking to less extreme thinking. And if we need to do that bit by bit, we do it bit by bit. Now, when people are less freaked out, they often tell me that if they got divorced and lost half their wealth, they won't have the money to do all the things they want to do, or they won't have the money to be able to do the things they want to do in the way they're currently able to do them. So if this is the concern, the opportunity lies in getting really specific about what it is you don't think you're going to be able to do. It's really easy to get lost in the vague but powerful fear that we wouldn't be able to live the way we want to anymore if we were to give up half our wealth. And then we tend to become paralyzed by that fear. And then we tend to stay married because we're so paralyzed by that fear, even if we really do want to experience life outside of our marriage. So we need to get specific. How will your life actually change if you're working with less money? When we get specific, clients often tell me that they wouldn't be able to travel as much, or they wouldn't be able to travel in the style they've grown accustomed to as often as they'd like to. Now, that's a great start, but from there, we need to get even more specific. How much would you ideally like to travel in a year? And how much less would you end up traveling if your financial situation changed? We got to get really specific about what you anticipate is going to change. And then we get to ask ourselves how much these changes matter to us. Let's say you currently like to travel abroad 6 times a year and you like to fly first class and you like to stay at 5-star accommodations and you like to be able to dine at the best restaurants and order any bottle of wine off the list without looking at the prices. And let's say you really like shopping and you really like buying nice things when you travel. And let's say that if you got divorced, you would find it financially feasible to make these kinds of trips 3 times a year rather than 6 times a year. Hypothetically, of course. Now, if this is what you determine, here's the next question. Is this a problem for you? If traveling in the style you like 3 times a year rather than 6 times a year is your foreseeable future, is that a problem for you? You get to decide. There isn't a right or a wrong answer to this kind of question. You are allowed to value whatever you value. The point is just to get really clear on what you value and what you want to do about it. You may really not like the idea of cutting back on your travel schedule or adjusting the manner in which you travel, and that's fair enough. But here's a question for you to consider. Is it that you don't like the idea of cutting back on your travel, or because you don't like the idea of something you currently have being taken away from you? Or is it that traveling in a certain way with a certain frequency is deeply important to you and makes your life worth living? And if it's the latter, how bad would it really be for you to have less of an experience that's really important to you? Sometimes we're okay with having less of something we really value, and sometimes we aren't. And the problem, as I see it, is that often we don't make this decision consciously. We may not like the idea of not having something, or we may not like the idea of having less of something. So we make that mean that it's truly important for us to not relinquish that something. But sometimes we're actually just fine if we have less of something, even if it's something we really value a lot. And often, one of the big reasons why we're fine with having less of something we value is because it's being willing to have less of something that enables us to have or experience something else that we value, or more of something else that we value. If you're really concerned about hanging on to your money, you don't need to judge yourself for that. You're allowed to prioritize keeping all of your money, even if that means choosing to stay in a marriage you're not all that excited about. But you may want to ask yourself what else you value aside from money. And perhaps most obviously, if you've been cheating on your spouse, one of the things you may really want is the freedom to have a non-affair relationship with someone other than your spouse, or to be able to have a relationship with whoever you want, whenever you want, or to simply have an experience of life that doesn't include being married to your current spouse. There may be a lot of reasons why you really want to have these experiences, and all of those reasons put together may essentially mean that you really value the opportunity to experience this particular sort of freedom. And you get to ask yourself what that's worth to you. Maybe you critically consider the question and you decide that actually you don't want the experience of living outside of your marriage that badly. Maybe you decide that actually you really do like the money better than the freedom, even if it's mostly about the idea of having a certain amount of money. But then again, maybe you really do want the freedom to live outside of your marriage that badly. Maybe you want nothing more than to live in a different way and to have the option of having different relationships and a different relationship of your own self and your own autonomy and your own individuality. Maybe you really, really, really want those things. So maybe it's worth it to have less money to be able to live in the way you'd rather be living. As far as I know, money is a renewable resource, but time isn't. If you want to experience life in a particular way, waiting to do that means you're giving up time in which you could already be doing that. As far as I know, we don't get time back. However, money is something that we can create more of in our lives. Some of us need to learn how to do that, but that is something that we can learn how to do. It's fair enough to not like the idea of relinquishing some of the money you currently have. But if you're really stuck on that concern, I want you to think seriously about the opportunities you have to replenish your coffers going forward. I bet that if you think about it, you'll probably be able to see the ways that you can create more money a lot more easily than you can create more time. Another thing that I really want to share with you is that sometimes it turns out that the person who fears they won't be able to live the way they want to live if they give up half their wealth is actually wrong. So for instance, someone who loves traveling and loves staying at ultra high-end hotels may tell me about how much money they need for the kind of travel they like to engage in. And then a moment later, they'll tell me, well, I only take a week off a year anyway. I love to work. It's not like I'm traveling all the time. Having less money will actually not make any difference in the amount of traveling I do or in the style in which I travel, right? People tell me this kind of thing all the time. Also, people tell me the difference in my wealth won't make any difference in my life right now. It'll only matter when I retire, but I'm not planning to retire anytime soon, and I know I can make a lot more money before I do. Sometimes all it takes is a little critical investigation of our thoughts to see that relinquishing some of our money or half of our net worth or whatever it is, if we were to get divorced, isn't as much of a problem as we might have initially thought. The really cool thing about examining and interrogating our thinking about money is that we may find that we actually enjoy our wealth even more when we aren't quite so desperately attached to it. And for another thing, when we are willing to investigate our thinking about the value of our money, we may give ourselves the opportunity to pursue things that are worth even more to us than money. We may give ourselves the opportunity to live a richer life overall. It's really important to know that making choices that prioritize one thing that we value over another thing we value may not be comfortable, at least maybe not immediately. Sometimes it's really uncomfortable to relinquish something that we value, even if doing so is what enables us to experience something else that we value, or more of that something else that we value. And we don't have to feel sorry for ourselves when we find ourselves in this position. We don't have to entertain the idea that it's not fair to find ourselves having to make hard choices between two things we value. Now, if you have been thinking this way, I'm not scolding you. To echo something I said earlier, there's a really common idea out there that holding on to certain resources or maintaining a certain standard of living or having a certain amount of money is intrinsically good. This way of thinking is definitely out there, and if you've absorbed it, there's nothing wrong with you. And I don't think this way of thinking is totally off target. For instance, would I rather have money in the bank rather than not have money in the bank? Sure. Would I rather have assets than debts? Sure. Would I rather have more money than less money? Again, the answer is yes. However, although this logic is sometimes helpful, it isn't always helpful. I'll give you an example from my own life. This isn't about dollars in the bank per se, but it's definitely a financial example. The last two jobs I had before I became fully self-employed as a coach provided me with some of the best employer-sponsored health insurance that a person could possibly have, in the United States anyway, and my employee contribution to my insurance premiums was very modest. Was my salary amazing in either of these positions? No, especially not by San Francisco standards. But I had excellent health, dental, and vision coverage for myself and my spouse, and I valued this excellent health coverage for a lot of reasons. For one thing, I believed, and still believe, that excellent health insurance coverage is a very nice thing to have. My work as a sociologist extended into healthcare and health policy and health insurance, and I believed, and still believe, in the importance of being protected from financial ruin through good health insurance coverage. I believe in the importance of access to quality healthcare, both for everyone in general and for myself in particular. And since the United States has the healthcare system that it does, my ticket to excellent healthcare and health insurance was through employers. Now, here's the important thing to point out. Even though I was and still am ideologically in favor of good health insurance coverage, and even though I really liked what I thought of as the security of having good health insurance coverage, my little family doesn't actually use that much healthcare. Neither my spouse nor I have chronic health issues. Knock on wood. Neither of us have really needed our excellent benefits or benefited from our excellent benefits in the way that some people do. That didn't matter to me. What mattered to me was the security I imagined I got from having my super awesome health insurance. I liked the idea of having the health and dental and vision insurance that we had very, very much. Now, the only problem was I did not like the source of my excellent benefits. I had no love for the jobs that provided me with my wonderful, magical health insurance. And for me, this was a problem. For me, being able to do work that I love is really, really important, like existentially important. So although I really liked having my awesome medical, dental, and vision insurance, the misery tax that I was paying to keep those benefits was pretty high, right? While I was still working the second of the two jobs that provided me with these great benefits, I started coaching. And when my coaching practice started to grow, I went down to part-time with my employer, and I was able to keep my benefits and work part-time and have a bustling coaching practice. And although this was the sort of compromise that could have worked really well for some people, it was not a solution for me. I really didn't want anything to do with the job that provided the great health insurance. The only thing that I got from the job that I valued was the benefits. And on the other side of things, I really wanted to devote myself to my coaching practice full time. But the idea of those benefits being such an important source of security for me kept me in that job for longer than I would have liked to have stayed. But I also knew, of course I knew, that I wanted to be done with that particular form of misery. So I did leave the job. And when I did, I took my benefits through Cobra. And at the time, paying for the same benefit package that I'd had as an employee for myself and my spouse through Cobra cost about like $1,800 a month, I think. Maybe it was $1,900. And so going from contributing I think it was maybe $100, maybe $200 to my employer-sponsored health insurance a month to $1,900 felt like a big leap, right? I was determined to make it work, but that was a significant amount of money to add to my household's monthly expenses. And I was nervous about taking that on. But I was willing to deal with that nervousness and figure out how to make it work financially. And that's what I did. Then, when my Cobra ran out, I learned that I couldn't even buy the kind of coverage I had had through my employer and then through Cobra at any price. I think I should have known that, but somehow I didn't, or I'd forgotten about that. And when I learned about this, I was not happy. I wanted the sense of security that I associated with my awesome health insurance coverage, and I was willing to consider paying even more money for it than whatever it was I was currently paying through Cobra. But that turned out to be not possible. So, guess what? Now I pay even more money than I was paying for my Cobra benefits for far, far, far less good health insurance. And I no longer have dental and vision coverage. If you know about health insurance and self-employment, you know all of the details of how this works. And if you don't know about this, you really don't want me to bore you with the details. But anyway, the point is, I don't like this situation. I am pissed about this. I'm angry that I personally don't have access to the kind of awesome health insurance coverage that I used to. I'm angry that other people also can't buy the kind of health insurance policy that I used to have. I'm angry that health insurance is the way it is in the United States, and approximately every 2 to 4 days, I think about all of this, not necessarily for any good reason. And I get super pissed off. And I have a moment of being super fucking angry about my health insurance situation in particular and the health insurance situation in the United States more generally. Now, here's the thing. At the moment, anyway, my shitty, not terrible, but relatively shitty, expensive health insurance and my lack of dental and vision coverage have not had a major impact on my life. Do I dislike the idea of paying more for less? Sure, I do. Would I prefer to have access to a different plan? Yes, I would. But again, knock on wood, I don't have major health issues. Neither does my spouse. Yes, our premium costs more and covers less, and I don't like that. But here's the kicker, people. Listen hard. My rabid dislike of this whole situation causes me more trouble than the situation itself. My thoughts about all of this are far more bothersome than the actual financial circumstances of my current health insurance coverage. Now, could that change if I got into a really gnarly accident or came down with a major illness and our medical expenses shot way up? Sure, it could. But there are ways that I can prepare for that possibility without getting too worked up about it. And if that were to happen and I wasn't prepared, I could deal with it in the present one step at a time, which is really the only way we can deal with just about anything. And I will tell you that what I get in exchange for giving up my beautiful, amazing employer-sponsored health insurance is very valuable to me. I don't have to work for an employer that I really don't care to work for. I don't have to do work that I'm not interested in or excited about. I get to spend my productive time doing things that I'm passionate about doing. That's pretty darn important to me. So even if the idea of giving up this thing that I really valued bothered me and still does bother me, what I get from being willing to not have that thing anymore is worth a lot. I would like to think that if I really wanted to, I could get myself a job through an employer other than myself, and I could get myself some kick-ass health insurance again if I wanted to. But do I want to do that? Do I want the whole thing that would entail? Absolutely not. Okay, let's switch gears. This is actually on theme in a lot of ways, but it's also different in others. I'm now going to answer a question a listener sent in. Here it is. Are the stakes higher for the over 50 crowd when it comes to making the decision to, I think the word is stay and work on the relationship, leave it, or stay with a LT affair? And by LT affair, I assume this person means long-term affair. What are your thoughts on the topic of being trapped by time? I'm going to read that again just so it's clear. Are the stakes higher for the over 50 crowd when it comes to making the decision to stay and work on the relationship, leave it, or stay with a long-term affair? What are your thoughts on the topic of being trapped by time? The first thing I'll say in response to this question is that my clients over the years have ranged in age from their mid-20s to their mid-70s. Off the top of my head, I'd say that more than half of my clients have been in their 40s or 50s, but that's just a rough off-the-cuff estimate. So when I put these podcast episodes together, I'm thinking about trends in my clients' experiences. I'm thinking about common issues that my clients deal with. And the kinds of infidelity-related opportunities and challenges I talk about on this show are things that clients of all different ages contend with. I actually don't come across too many age-specific concerns or concerns that appear primarily within a particular age group. And I think the reason for that is quite simple. And that reason is this: age is a neutral circumstance. And what I mean by that is, it isn't inherently meaningful to be 50 years old, or 20, or 40, or 60, or whatever. It isn't inherently meaningful to be older than 50 or younger than 50. Now, I know there are a lot of messages out there that will tell us otherwise, but age really is just a number. However, what you make that number mean matters a lot. If you think that the stakes are higher for you in some way because you're over 50, that belief will guide the choices you make. And the choices you make will have a real impact on your life. And you might like the impact of your choices, but you also might not like the impact of your choices. The really interesting thing is that the idea that the stakes are higher for you because you're over 50 can be leveraged in a number of different directions. Some people tell me, oh my God, I'm 50. I'm pretty sure I have less life in front of me than I have behind me. So this means it's time for me to go after what I really want. I've wasted some time, but I can't waste time anymore. I've got to get busy living. Now, on the other hand, some people think, oh my God, I'm 50. That means I'm getting old. And since I'm getting old, that means that the stakes of my choices are higher. And that means I need to be really conservative in my choices. I need to avoid anything that I think could be risky. And I think any big changes in my life could be risky. So I'd better avoid anything that I think counts as a big change. So I want you to consider the possibility that we're only as trapped by time as we think we are. And if you think you are trapped by time, what I suggest is that you get really clear about what exactly you mean by that. What does it mean to you to be trapped by time? Without getting more specific, this idea of being trapped by time is a pretty vague idea. And scary but vague ideas can limit us in all kinds of crazy ways. So break down what you mean by being trapped by time. And then after you've done that, you also may want to consider all of the ways in which you are not trapped by time. You are allowed to think that you are trapped by time if you really want to. But if you do want to think that way, at least give yourself the chance to consider the ways in which you are not trapped by time. Finally, it may be really useful for all of us to remember that we don't know how much time we've got. To quote the Tibetan Buddhist nun Pema Chodron, death is certain. Time of death is uncertain. What matters? Sure, it may be fair to say that if we're 50, it's more likely that we have more life behind us than in front of us than we do if we are 30. But we really don't know for sure. And no matter how old we are, the question of what matters to us may be the question that matters the most. All right, people, that is just about it for today. So again, when this episode comes out, it's going to be about Thanksgiving time. We're going to be on the cusp of the holidays. And if you have been thinking that you would like some help getting through the holidays or help with anything related to your infidelity situation before the end of this year, now is the time to sign up for an introductory coaching session with me. I would love to help you be proactive and get through the holiday season and deal with your infidelity situation in ways that you feel great about. And of course, my online course, You're Not the Only One, contains powerful teachings and tools that you can start making use of right away. And it's available to you instantly after you enroll. Whichever way you choose to work with me, I encourage you to be proactive about finding yourself some relief and a clear path forward. You are just a few mouse clicks away from starting to resolve your infidelity situation in a way that you feel great about. To get started working with me, go to my website, mariemurphyphd.com. Thank you all so much for listening. Have an amazing day. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to Your Secret is Safe with Me with Dr. Marie Murphy. Make sure to click subscribe to get updates on our latest episodes.